wonderful to be with you today again. We have some exciting things to tell you today, and I have a great friend who is becoming a friend, a new guest, and her name is Dr. Rivkah Lambert Adler. And we are going to speak about some exciting things, what's happening in the world, what's happening in Israel. But first of all, I want to tell you the exciting things. We live prophecies, I think, fulfilling prophecies every day.
Every day.
Every day. I'm pleased that you know that.
Yes, it's quite extraordinary to watch it playing out every day.
It is, it is. And we want to tell you, Netanyahu was speaking to the Vice President of the United States, Mr. Pence, and listen what he was saying. And again, this is like prophecy that we can see. He was saying to him this week, we have a common past, we have a common future, and we have a shared destiny. Isn't it amazing? And not only that, the Vice President, Mr. Pence, was also in the Knesset. First time that a Vice President from America was in the Knesset, which was, first of all, amazing thing. And he was doing a blessing in Hebrew.
And not an easy one either.
Yes, and not an easy one, which is called, let me see, I have it written somewhere. No, I'll try to remember. Is Shehecheyanu.
That's not bad.
Okay, good. And which is a blessing that you do for special occasions. Like we arrive at this time and God has provided till now. It's a beautiful blessing. But what was amazing, guys, is he was speaking in Hebrew. And this again is a biblical prophecy that's happening in front of our eyes. Then Christians are starting to speak Hebrew. I'm sorry, but this is so exciting because it's something that's happening in front of our eyes. And I like to saw Netanyahu was speaking, Prime Minister Netanyahu was speaking in Hebrew, and he was saying, this is the language of my forefathers. And I like when he said that. So it's like there is a continuation. Okay. This is exciting. So Rivka, thank you for coming.
Pleasure.
You have a lot of things to tell us, and that we can discuss together. But maybe you can give us also a bit of your background. And I will say that Rivka, also you had a PhD who was from Maryland.
Right, University of Maryland.
University of Maryland. And you make Aliyah in 2010 from
Baltimore. Right.
And you love to speak also with the ladies about the Bible, about redemption. So you have a lot of rich things to bring. But today you are going to speak about your book, 10 from the Nations, a Torah awakening among non-Jews. And so this is great. But I want to know a bit about your story first, how you arrived here, because I heard a great story of how you make Aliyah here, how God moved you.
Right, it was definitely God.
Yeah.
So I'll just say briefly that I was born Jewish, but I was born into a home that wasn't very Jewishly aware. So I knew I was Jewish, but until I was after college, it didn't mean a whole lot to me. And when I started studying, after I finished school, I took a break from school, and I started studying about what does it actually mean that I'm a Jewish person. I didn't really understand. And that, over a period of years, led to me exploring traditional Judaism, Torah Judaism, which I didn't know at the time there were still people like that. I was very naive, very not knowledgeable about the Jewish world. And so I didn't know that there were people who were still very, what we would call Orthodox.
Mm-hmm. But there was no Jewish community where you were?
I wasn't plugged in, so I didn't even notice. Initially, I didn't notice. And then I thought all Jewish people that were left kind of in America were liberal Jews. And that was my first experience. Just to fast forward kind of quickly, I was so intrigued by what I was learning about the Torah that I started taking my studies more seriously, and I did eventually meet people who were Torah observant Jews. And even today, considering where I came from, it's a little shocking to me that this is really true, that I'm a Torah observant woman living in Israel, married to a rabbi. Like, I can't even believe that that's my life now. But back then, as I was becoming religious, there were really there was one issue that really was very important and very hard for me to work through, and that was the status of women in traditional Judaism, like, and so forth. So that took a lot of effort and a lot of study for me to integrate how could I feel complete as a human being and follow God and still have my dignity intact as a woman. So, okay, I worked through all that. And then I started to get very turned on by Israel. That was my second great Jewish passion. And over a period of 9 years, from September 11, 2001, when at that point I had been to Israel a few times, 3 or 4 times, and I liked Israel. I thought it was nice. But my children are 4th generation American, and I thought it never occurred to me that we would not be living in America forever and ever, amen, until September 11, 2001. And then I got that Israel thing in my head that I couldn't shake.
Okay, so what happened on the 11th of September?
On the exact day, like as we're watching the news and so forth, I don't want this to sound like I'm crazy or something. I really had such a strong message from heaven that our lives in America were temporary and it was time to go to Israel.
Isn't it? So, because I think it's important to know that God was speaking to so many people on that day. And me too, I was with my children and some friends, and suddenly this happened, and we look at the television, and we're like, oh my gosh. And again, like you say, I like how you say, like, something from heaven came to me. And like, I don't hear God's voice every day, but like it was so strong in me when I look at the TV screen, it was like, don't waste the time of the time. And I think maybe, and sometimes it's even difficult to understand what does he say? But maybe it's the time of, because redemption is coming, which is interesting. I never thought about that before, but I think because it's like the time of redemption is coming, we're coming into something new. And anyway, carry on.
Yes, so on that day, I'm not saying I heard an actual voice. What I felt, I think, was such a clarity that everything that I had assumed about my future was not so, and that God was opening another door for me and for my whole family. And it didn't, some people were in a position, whatever their family structure, some Jewish people actually moved to Israel right away, or very shortly thereafter. That's not how my story played out. It took us 9 years to get here for various reasons, but everything shifted on that day, and I saw America as not my forever home, but as in its place in Jewish history, that the Jewish people have, since 2,000 years ago when we were exiled from this land, we have been moved from one country to another. And I knew that intellectually. I didn't think it applied to me and my generation. It was so, it wasn't even logical that I thought that way, but I never gave it a lot of thought. So it is like instantaneously, God clarified my vision, made it so obvious to me that our next step that was to come here. And then the next 9 years I spent convincing people, pushing that agenda, learning everything I could about Israel and so forth. Once we got here, I said, okay, now I'm here, and there's still plenty to learn and so forth, but at that point, another new idea, another new spiritual concept came into my world, and that in a very strong way, and that's the concept of redemption, what we call in Hebrew geula. And every day I have thoughts, and I study, and I teach, and I think about what's going on right now. We're in a different time. It feels like history is going much more quickly, prophecy is happening, and it's so unbelievably exciting to be connected to that.
Which is interesting again when you say that suddenly Israel came into your head, and because we are learning every day, and for me there was very much before the Jewish people and us, but I see that God is putting us together for a purpose, and like we are moving together more for a purpose. And for me the same. In 2002, inside of me here, I had Israel all the time, there. And I was like, what's the matter with me? Am I gaga? No, seriously, I was. And why is that? But God needed to be very strong like that, intensely, for me to shift my focus, because there was a lot of things to change. And suddenly, maybe we can start to speak about your book, because I can see for the people, it was the same. The first lady, I was reading the story, and I was like, whoa, this is very interesting.
Can I, before you read a quote, can I say something about the book itself? So I'm always looking for how can I respond to what God is asking of me in my life? And I feel very much like God opens a door and I walk through it, right? None of what's happening to me right now and the work that I'm doing right now was something that I thought up myself. It just, opportunities open up and I take them. So we had a Christian man in our home coming to share a Shabbat meal, and after dinner we were sitting and he told me, and this was one of the very first indications I had that something's going on, because I didn't know, like I really thought there's Jewish people and there's not Jewish people, and we can be friendly, but like what, I don't know, I didn't see us sharing a whole lot. Then he says to me, for Father's Day that year, he asked his wife to buy him a Jewish prayer book by a very famous Jewish publisher. And I thought, why does a Christian man from Texas want a Jewish prayer book? So I asked him, and he said he loves the Hebrew prayers. There's a lot of Psalms in Hebrew prayers that he related to, and he loved it so much that he asked his wife to buy him a Bible from the same publisher, a Jewish, Hebrew on one side, English on one side. And that was my first indication that there were Christian people who were interested in how Jewish people prayed or studied Bible or whatever. I had an opportunity, because of my interest in redemption, to start writing for, I'm a journalist, and to start writing for Breaking Israel News, which has a particular outreach. You're familiar with them, right? So one of my jobs was to interpret what is going on in Israel in terms of biblical prophecy. And as a result of that, people who were reading my stories, who were also very connected to Israel, obviously, because they're reading about Israel every day, they would come and visit, and they would want to meet me, my family, and they would tell me their stories of how they are keeping what I always thought of was Jewish holidays, but the biblical festivals. They are keeping Shabbat, or they're honoring Shabbat and celebrating Shabbat in some way. They are eating what they call biblically clean, like no pork, no shellfish. I don't know what else that involves. And they were studying the Torah portion of the week along with the schedule of the Jews. And this was astonishing to me. And
Which is what we started to do many years ago, slowly, thinking Shabbat is important. So it's interesting that you say it's something universal that's happening all around the world.
Right. So that's the story I wanted to tell with the book, because here I am, a Jewish person. Because I wasn't always religious, I'm not a sheltered person. I know the world. This was totally new to me. And the more people I met, the more I realized this is a big story. And the book, I wanted to give people a chance to tell their testimony of how they got turned on to caring about Israel, caring about the destiny of the Jewish people, caring about the Torah, keeping biblical festivals. That whole world that may be much more familiar to you than it was to me when I started this project was a whole paradigm shift for me as a Jewish person. And I know most Jews have no idea what's going on out there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you say that, because I think there is two things that has to happen, I would say. That this is happening. So many Christians are getting aware, and it's like something that God is doing in them with the Spirit. But like, as you said, now the Jewish people needs to be aware of these things. So it's working in the two worlds, which is quite amazing. This lady was saying, I find the passage, she said, I believe this Torah awakening is all part of the unfolding of God's plan for all humankind. And I think we do some studies also with David Nekrutman. So it's like we are digging also and all, and it's like suddenly discovering more, because it takes time, you know. It's like you have, there is so that you had before that you have to change.
Correct.
And it's like, it's an old paradigm who is changing. And so now it's like, whoa, wait a minute, but like Genesis was the book about humankind and a nation. And this nation had to tell the world that there was one God, and Abraham's story was starting and all of that. And after now, it's like we can see that humankind is saying, whoa, wait a minute, God spoke to a nation, maybe we need to go to see them, which is again Zechariah 8. Okay, carry on, because...
Okay, so I wrote this book, or I didn't write everything because it's many of the words of the 34 contributors, but I framed the book in order to say to Jewish people and to non-Jewish people, something's going on here. God is moving us. Now, there's a Jewish vision of a universal recognition of God, and we have, for most of human history, been divided into our different subgroups, and very often there was animosity among us, and so forth.
Yes.
And you know, I'm a parent, so I have more than one child, so I know how I feel as a parent. Not that I find my parenting a good analogy often for trying to understand God. So I know that when my children are getting along with one another, I get a tremendous amount of pleasure from that. And I think that God also ultimately wants us all to recognize one another as his children under his leadership. And it's very much a theme in Jewish prayer. It's very much a theme in Tanakh, in the Jewish Bible, that ultimately we all recognize who's running this show, and that we see each other as being in the same family of nations, and that we are able to come together all worshiping God. That is a messianic. It's a messianic. Yeah, the whole idea of that. And when I see, look, we're not there yet. When I teach these ideas to Jewish people, I say, listen, there's still plenty of people who hate us out there. We're not in this messianic area, but
we can see.
Every day I get contacted by people who are somewhere coming from Christianity, and they're somewhere on this continuum. And not everybody in the book is in the same place, as you well know. But something's going on, and I frame it for myself using that verse from Zechariah, that God is moving us all to this place where we have more in common than what divides us.
I know, sometimes I say it's like two worlds that's colliding, and suddenly, you know, it's like you take two balls, and suddenly they're coming closer to each other. And I think God is giving this energy to our two worlds, and it's like colliding. And I would say even not just the Christian. I think there is some Muslim or some whoever who are not even Christian or Muslim, and who are feeling like, because when I like also to go on the Temple Mount, you see the world there. And you see people, I saw some people from India and saying, we wanted to come here, we wanted to be in this place.
See, I think that people who are spiritually inclined, whatever tradition they come from or whatever, that those are the souls that God can reach the most easily, and those are the people that are responding. And just yesterday, I heard about a woman who comes from what she called a moderate Muslim or liberal Muslim background. She wants to come to Jerusalem to study, not because she wants to convert, but because she's a truth seeker, and she wants to know what is God's real truth. And as a Jewish person, we have this expression in Judaism, I'm sure you're familiar with this, Or LaGoyim, which means that the Jewish people have some responsibility of being a light to the nations. That expression can be understood in many ways, and we don't have time to get into it, but to me, it means the Jewish people have been holding this Torah for over 3,000 years, and we've examined it upside down, inside out. We have, you could fill, huge libraries.
You know it so well that you can speak about it, and it's part of you.
Yeah, not
too.
me personally, but the Jewish
but
people as a whole, right? So I feel like we have this treasure, and the rest of the world is starting to become interested. Therefore, we have a tremendous responsibility to open up doors, not to proselytize, but to share what we know for people who are seeking God's message in the world. And it is very exciting for me as a Jewish person and as a Jewish educator, because my background is in adult education. And because I went through this process of knowing basically nothing to becoming a more knowledgeable Jew, I understand what it's like to be a beginner. And so it makes me, I think, a more effective teacher, and I can break things, complicated ideas down for people who are just beginning to understand. And I take that responsibility very seriously. I want to talk about this project that we have coming up, Passover, but can I just go on, or did you want to say something? Okay.
Yeah.
So because people are contacting me from all over the world, and because Jerusalem is the heart and soul of the world, people want to come here and study.
The heartbeat of the world.
Right.
The nations are coming to Jerusalem.
Right.
And they're not coming for holidays. They are coming to seek him. They want to know more. God is like saying, okay, come to see me. And they say, yes, I want to come to see you. So I know that, and it's like a family. I think it's good that different things are happening because different people need different things. But what you are doing, like people coming for, like obviously for the feast, and again in the book is what I see is like before, and like in history you can see the people are coming to Israel to discover Israel. But now they say, wait a minute, there is the people of Israel. Right. And now this is what's happening, the connections that's happening. So I'm sure start.
Right. And you know, so people, when they make their first trip to Israel, there are things you want to see, right? But if you're going to come, if you're going to take seriously this idea that you should be here for the biblical feast as often as you can, then you're going to keep coming and coming and coming. And there's only so many times you can be a tourist. Now you want to get into the heart and soul of this place. And that means meeting the people who live here, studying the Bible with them, and so forth. So I'm trying to develop, I think eventually, there will be dozens of these programs, if not hundreds of them, because people need different things. People have different approaches to that, different target audiences. But right now, there's just a paucity of resources. So we're starting with this, and hope it will be well received, as you said, and it'll be something for people to look forward to when they come to Israel. You know, when the third temple is built, and when the biblical feasts are celebrated in Jerusalem as they were in the Bible, then there'll be plenty going on. But even still, somebody who comes for Passover, for example, may have arranged for themselves some kind of a Seder on the first night, but then they're here, like, now what do you do? The whole country is pretty much on vacation because that's the way the Jewish calendar works. And you can go touring, but you want to plug into...
That's it, you want the connection.
Right.
Which is again Zechariah 8:23, where it's like they are grasping the corner of the garment of Ish, a man, which is a Yehudi, which is a Jewish person. Right. So they're not grabbing he's one. So it's like there is this connection together. And after they say, because you know what? I know that God is with you, but that this with you is plural.
Right. With you all.
Yeah, with you all, which is like the nation of Israel.
Right. So that's why I put that verse on the cover of the book, because that's the process that I see happening.
Exactly.
I see people... Yeah, go ahead.
We say that time of redemption is going fast. Friends, I hope that you really enjoyed the time with Rivka. And I think we need to do some more programs together. We need to carry on, you know. There is a lot of things to say. And from Rivka and from me, bye. See you next week. Shalom, dear friends. Today we are going to look at Zechariah 8:23. It's a beautiful verse. And again, we are learning to say it in English and in Hebrew. Okay, so let us go. Thus said the Lord of hosts, Ko Amar Adonai Tsevahot. When we say Adonai Tsevahot, is the Lord of hosts, and it's to show the universal way of what God is doing in the world, not just in the nation of Israel, but like all around the world, okay? And in those days it shall come to pass, Bayamim Anema, that 10 men shall take hold, Asher Yachasiku, Asara Anashim. Do you remember men we saw is Anashim, is something that we've learned already, okay? Out of all the language of the nations. It's not just out of the nations, but out of the language of the nations, because Hebrew is getting more exciting and more like we learn the Torah, we learn the Bible through the Hebrew, and it really gave us the understanding of God's heart. So it's like Mikol Leshanot is languages, Hagoim, and Hagoim is the nations. Shall even take hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew. Vehe Resiku Bekanaf Ish Yehudi. So when we see Kanaf, is the corner of the garments where the Jewish people put the tzitzit, okay? And they are saying, we will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. It's very simple in Hebrew, is lemor nelcha imachem, ki shama'enu Elohim imachem. And imachem means with you. And we know that God is with you. So it's interesting because they are holding on ish of a man, but they say, because we know that God is with your nation, imachem, all of you as a nation of Israel. So this is what we've learned this time. Anashim, which is people, ish, which is a man, and goim is the nation, and lashon is language. And this is what we've learned this week. See you next week. Thank you, Rivka, for coming.
Thank
Wonderful to have you speaking about what's happening in the world with your book, 10 from the Nations. And from Rivka and from me, we say bye. We send you plenty of blessings from Zion. And see you next week. Bye.